when resolving incidents, restoring outages, and meeting your SLAs is your tool holding you back. Before we dive into the presentation, let's review a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's event. This presentation will be recorded and made available within the next few days, and an email will be sent to you with a link to the recording. So feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues who are not able to join today's event. If you have a question at any time during the webinar, please submit it using the question tab located on your webinar player. Your question will be addressed during the Q&A session at the end of the session. At the end, please also take a moment to rate this presentation and provide us some feedback by taking a short survey at the end. Now, I would like to introduce you to our speakers for today's webinar. I have joining me George Spalding. He is the Executive Vice President at Pink Elephant, and he is regarded as one of the world's most insightful and engaging ITSM industry experts, executive management consultants, and trainers. He holds certifications as an ITIL expert, business relationship management professional, an organizational change management practitioner, and a lean IT professional. He has spent the past 3 decades helping individuals in 30 countries on 5 continents realize their full potential by simplifying complex topics and inspiring people to acquire new skills. He is also the co-author of the ITIL version 3 Continual Service Improvement Core Volume, a regular contributor of editorial articles and white papers, and a sought-after keynote speaker and presenter at ITSM conferences and events around the world. I also have Vincent Jeffrey with me today. He is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Everbridge, with a focus on IT service alerting, IT team collaboration, and process orchestration. He has over 15 years of experience in the IT operations and service management space, with expertise in critical communications, IT service alerting, application performance management, IT process, runbook, and workload automation. Vincent holds a MS in Mechanical Engineering and Computer Science, 2 certificates from MIT Sloan School of Management, and has international experience with work in Europe and in North America. Now, without further ado, I will hand things over to you, George.
Thank you, Shirley, and hello, Vincent. It's always scary to hear your qualifications because I feel intimidated. You are so much more qualified, or at least certified, than I am. I'm just older, Vincent.
I don't know where this was coming from.
Anyway, let's move forward. Okay, let's see if my slide moves work. Let's see if that works at all. Hang on. Oh, there we go. All right, so it is my belief that the current situation in today's IT incident management practices lacks automation and generates waste. Now, you have to understand, incident management, we've been talking about incident management for at least minimum 30 years, and if not way more than that. Way back in the 90s and even in the 80s, I was in the business of helping people do help desks at that time, and then moved into the world of ITIL, where of course we had incident management, et cetera. So we've been dealing with this for most of the people listening to this call forever. We've always had incident management in the forefront of IT, and we've usually had some sort of a help desk and service desk as well. So one of the things that's happening out there right now in the world of IT is an incredible level of complexity. Now, the reason why we have this complexity is not because we all sat back and said, ooh, I think it would be so cool to have a lot of complexity. No, that is not why it's happening. It's happening because what's gone on in the last 10 to 20 years is that the customers, the business comes to us with answers now instead of questions. when, in the early days of IT, we were the answerer of all the questions. The business would come to us with nothing but questions. And nowadays, they've started coming to us with answers. So they basically said, look, I've been on the web, I've done all my shopping, and here's the thing I want you to buy for me, install and now support it. Even if it not only is not part of the big plan, even if the platform that it runs on is not part of the big plan. Or the famous, hey, I went to a conference and there was this guy at a booth and he was offering a software as a service solution. So I gave him my credit card and I've tried it out and now that's the way I want to go. So we're doing a SaaS solution, et cetera, et cetera. We're not getting the same level of consulting or the same level of influence on these kinds of decisions. So what we've got now is almost a spaghetti-like chart where we would look at, well, we're doing some of this, some of this, some of this, some of this, and this business unit has this, and this other business unit has that, and then central IT is doing this, and it's incredible. But when you look at all of the elements that we've listed here, which is out of a pink course, it turns out that at least half of them, incidents occur hundreds of times, nobody looking for the root cause. Incident tickets disappear into some sort of black hole until somebody starts screaming loudly enough so that we go, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we should have done that. Multiple service desks out there with their own tools and their own processes. I see this in a lot of places. This is a huge waste of money at the very beginning of it because we have multiple tools and we're paying maintenance and paying all the software licensing for multiple tools. But then it turns out that then leads to, or one led to the other, chicken and egg, separate processes for incident management so that they can't dovetail. We really have no centralized database of incidents as to what's going on. It's a mess out there in terms of that. And then redundant or duplicate tools that have been bought. In one organization, very large company, I'll give you that, we asked them, Pink asked them, how many different types of tools do you have in the organization? They came back and said 43. Oh, 43 different types of software tools. Okay, great. In those 43 types, how many actual tools do you have? 256. Wow, 256 different tools that you're paying licensing, and yes. Okay, in that 256, do you have any duplication? Like you've purchased the same tool twice? Oh yes, at least in several cases, we have 9 to 10 different instances of the same tool, and we're paying for 9 or 10 different instances because the different business units refuse to cooperate with each other, even though they wanted to use the exact same tool. Now, you could argue, well, they wanted different configurations, they had different this, they had different this, but incredible amounts of waste are happening in the complexity in IT today. And the other piece, the other backdrop, if you will, that's going on is that and I'm old enough now that I've been in this business long enough that I've actually seen the needle move on this. So how much does it cost IT to just keep the lights on? In other words, to just keep doing today what we did yesterday and keep doing tomorrow what we did today. No innovation, no growth, no transformation, no modernization, whatever. Just keeping the lights on. 20 years ago, that was right around 50%. Now it's easily 70 to 80% of the entire IT spend. Every dollar that IT spends is spent keeping the lights on. So is it any wonder that the business looks at us and basically says, well, really, you guys are not about innovation, you're about plumbing. You're plumbers is what you really are, high-tech, sophisticated plumbers who are keeping the electricity running, it's keeping the lights on, keeping the water going, etc. So, and this is a big deal because I'm seeing that there's no change in this. This is moving. The needle is continuing to move up. because we're not intervening in this process. We're not saying, look, we really need to innovate, grow, and transform. It's what the business wants from us. But we can't do it because we don't have the people, we don't have the resources, we don't have the money, we don't have the time. So this is becoming a big issue. And this lack of capacity to innovate, grow, transform chains IT, locks us in to legacy processes. We don't have time to change the process. It looks like it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Systems. Believe it or not, there are people out there, maybe obviously not the ones listening to this, because they would be much more advanced than this, but there are people out there who are running mission critical systems on Windows Server 2003. Sometimes they're running it on Windows Server 2003 in a virtual machine because they don't have any hardware that will run Windows Server 2003. Windows legacy systems, legacy tools leading to technical debt. And technical debt is just like any other kind of debt. You can pay me now or you can pay me later, but you are going to pay. And technical debt means that we have chosen to live with risk over time. Risk of technical failure, because Lord knows we have the ability, things will fail, hardware will fail, systems will fail over time when they get old and creaky, etc. They are, in many cases, I think the right word would be they are fragile. And we don't really have any sort of anti-fragile program for those kinds of systems. So there's a risk of technical failure, a risk of major incidents, a risk of significant outages. And significant outages, as you well know, have a high risk of business disruption. Now we have high visibility for this outage, and we're introducing the new concept, which is not new to you, but it's new to our conversation today, and that is unplanned work for IT staff. This is work which when I came in on Monday morning, I had 40, 50, 60 hours of work all planned out. And that is not what we're talking about here. So let's talk about unplanned work. First of all, let's look at unplanned work in terms of the service desk. Well, wait a minute, the service desk is in business to accept unplanned work. They plan for unplanned work. Agreed. I totally agree with you. However, if it can't be resolved at the service desk, and if we're now escalating the issue to second level and third level, and all that entails, whether it's event monitoring, giving us an alert, or whatever the escalation means, every point we escalated to, the work is unplanned. And we're now starting to see numbers because we're asking people at Pink, we're asking people, would you please start measuring unplanned work? Because nobody is. Nobody's measuring how much time is taken away by interruptions. We can all remember coming into work and working hard. We go home, we're exhausted, and somebody says, well, what did you do today? And we go, I don't remember what I did today. And that's because it was completely unplanned. You got sucked into an outage, and it really does feel that way. It's like quicksand, like you can't pull yourself away from the outage, and you can't just let go of it because it's real important, and a lot of people are down, so we have to be working on that. And this unplanned work is caused basically by technical debt that we knew was going to break at some point. And so we knew it was going to break. It was a risk that whether we decided to do it consciously or unconsciously, we were saying, okay, we'll take the risk. We didn't pay off. Now we have outages. Now we have unplanned work. And it is literally starting to show up at around 40 to 60% of IT staff time when we escalate into the more technical areas. So, okay, So if IT can't deliver value, so there's an interesting little deal that goes on here. What happens is if the business is booming and things are great, they need more IT. If the business starts to flatten out in terms of finances or business or actual activity, they need more IT. If there's a downturn and the business is starting to lose money or profits are starting to shrink, they need more IT to cut expenses. So no matter what level or what progression or what state the business is in, they're always going to have increasing IT demands. And if we can't meet them because we're spending 70 to 80% of the money, time, resources, etc., on keeping the lights on, so we don't have any more capabilities to meet these new demands from the business, whatever they may be, this leaves the business with literally no alternative but to go outside and start buying a SaaS solution, getting third parties involved, sometimes getting third parties involved that we literally in IT don't know about. So that's not impossible. I see it happen all the time where the business unit is actually contracting directly with a third party vendor. This is not a good situation. It's not a good situation according to ITIL 4. It's not a good situation according to SIAM. There's a lot of people who think that's a really bad idea, but that's what's going on out there right now. So I spend a lot of time in consulting and classes talking about lean. And I'm going to just shrink it all down now. Lean basically says, first of all, it divides all work into 3 buckets. Pretty simple. Bucket number 1, things that add value. Things that add value from the customer's perspective. Work that is important that we need to accomplish and that the customer really wants. In fact, the customer will even pay for it. Necessary non-value add. Things that we need to do, but the customer thinks, well, that's not my problem. So, and we say, I understand that, but we still need to recruit people. We still need to train people. We still need to do internal accounting. There's a lot of things we have to do, which are activities that you might not consider valuable but we have to do. And then there's the worst kind, and that is non-value add. And as far as lean is concerned, that's considered waste. And as far as lean is concerned, we should just eliminate it, period. Now, that sounds like a wonderful thing, and indeed it would be if we could eliminate waste. But lean is not crazy. Lean says, look, just let's start looking at it. Once you look at it, then you can actually and start classifying it. Then you can start to spend more of your time doing things that add to value and less of your time doing things that are wasteful. And there's a couple of things that are classified as waste and are the most wasteful. So here's the list that lean gives us of all the things that it considers waste. And number 1 on this list is defects and rework or incidents. So are you saying that lean is saying that we shouldn't manage incidents? No. Lean is saying you shouldn't have incidents. And in the absence of that perfection, which I don't think any of us have achieved, then what lean is saying is, look, let's spend more of our time doing actual work and less of our time fixing incidents. So since you're going to have them, is there a way to speed this up? If I need to basically, if we're going to still have incidents, which I think most of us do, we all know, no one is disagreeing on this call. We all believe that the ideal situation is 0 incidents. Perfect. Life is good. Everything works. Nothing ever goes wrong. Wow, that's great. That's not going to happen in the foreseeable future that you and I live, because we kind of live in the real world. So IT has to get better at incidents and incident response. And you think, well, I think, aren't we good at it? From what I'm seeing out there, we're not great. We're talking things that should basically happen in incredibly short time frames, and those time frames will often be specified in SLAs. And we're not meeting those SLAs. We're negotiating them. And in my world, the SLA is a promise that basically IT is making to the business. Look, we promise to deliver this service level agreement. We promise to deliver this service, and we promise to deliver it at this level. And that's what we've promised to do. So in many ways, I see out there that IT is not keeping their promises. And if you want a simple mantra of how to run an IT shop, it's don't make promises you can't keep. Don't do it in IT, don't do it in business, don't do it in your family, don't do it with your children. So we have to get better at this. Mean time to repair can get shorter. We can do this. Services can be restored faster. The business is telling us, the business is demanding from us faster release times, faster restoration times, fewer incidents, all the things that we kind of want. But what gets us to the point that's interesting is one of the principles of lean is to pursue perfection. Yet the very beginnings of ITIL, way back in the late 80s, early 90s, the very first book that was written was Help Desk. So, and Help Desk, of course, tended to own the incident management process. So we basically were in the early days of ITIL, we were trying to get a handle on this. We're trying to get control of a situation that was out of control. The two biggest things that were out of control in the early days was incidents just kept happening and blowing up, and changes kept going in and causing incidents. And we now know that we now have data that says that roughly 80% of the changes, 80% of the incidents that we deal with at the service desk are caused by changes that we do. So this is kind of crazy when you look at it from that perspective. I mean, we've been in IT, many of us, for 10, 20 years. So we can fix this. This is not crazy. We can fix this. So now we get this the new world of ITIL 4 and SIAM, and both of them are starting to recommend something called swarming. And the swarming is, since we don't want incidents to begin with, and since we want to get rid of them as fast as possible, swarming has become this new band-aid or buzzword. And swarming simply means everyone is supposed to drop everything they're doing and come running. Well, I disagree. This to me seems like way too many resources thrown at something and therefore wasteful, completely upping the amount of unplanned work, which we've already established is out of control. It truly is, there's no structured incident response if that's the way this is working. If that's the way it's supposed to work, there's no coordination. Who's running the show? Who's in charge? Who owns it? With no incident ownership itself, and no incident leadership. Many of you watch TV and you see something about California wildfires, things like that. And the person who's delivering the TV press conference, if you look at the bottom, is often referred to as the incident commander. And that's exactly what we need in IT. This is the person who is in charge of the fire. And that's what we need in IT. We need some sort of incident leadership, especially in major incidents. We need an incident commander, someone to run the incident, decide what resources are needed, where they're needed, who's not needed, what can we do, all of that. It's fairly straightforward.
Yes. I agree with that.
Okay. Vincent.
And yeah, George, I fully agree with what you just said, and the importance of having an incident commander. And again, yeah, I agree with the fact that we have to be careful about swarming just for the sake of swarming if nothing has been organized. And one of the points that you raised earlier is really important, and actually I wrote it down. Again, looking at all this, we need to take it from a lens, a lean IT lens, right? You said spend more of your time doing things that add value, and therefore less time doing things that are wasteful. And I think that's the key here. And what I'd like to do is share with you here some of the most important challenges for organizations when it comes to their ability to respond to critical incidents. And we all know that every organizations are different, but within each organization, there are going to be challenges. There might be around technology, and you mentioned a survey from Ping saying that what did you say, 256 tools that organizations were using on average?
Yes, it was well, not on average, but this one organization had that set up. Yes.
But what we know is, with the complexity of the technology, with organizations bringing more and more technology into their mix of tools and applications, they have a lot of monitoring tools, performance tools. Think about application performance management, network performance management, ticketing system. They have a ticketing system. Maybe sometimes they have more than one ticketing system. Communication, collaboration, and now with the adoption of DevOps, we see that a lot of product teams, they have their own Slack channel. They use Microsoft Teams, or some other will use WebEx Teams, and so on. Now, another area of change is around the people, as we know, and it's even more obvious in larger organizations, because the larger the organization, the more support teams, the more DevOps teams, the more locations, the more stakeholders and impacted users. So you have to deal with different teams, different people, which don't even belong to the same organization in some cases. And last but not least, the processes, right? We still see a lot of manual processes that are, and you made a very good point, George, they're killing the response time. They're killing our ability to respond to critical incidents within the service level agreement which we actually agreed upon, right? And limited cross-team processes. Yes, like you mentioned, George, everyone is looking at her own task and doesn't really care about everything else. They don't pay attention to the entire process, right? I'm done with what I was supposed to do. Let me go back to my very interesting projects, because I was not hired to be a firefighter, right? And like you mentioned with the incident commander, in some organizations, it's very difficult to know who owns what. So there's a lack of process ownership. We know we know who owns the tasks, but in terms of process, sometimes the seat is empty, right? So this is the theory, and we talked, and you talked also a lot about the theory, George. But what I want to do now is get back to earth and show you what a real life example of a major incident management process look like and this is a current process at a major bank, which I am actually working with at the moment. I have removed all the specific information, so the actual company cannot be identified, but it's important to see here that first, yes, great, they have a process in place. They have a major incident management process in place. Now, if you look at the details, you'll see that it's only during business hours. If it's after business hours, then it's not documented. We have an issue. I would say that looking at, and because I've spent a lot of time on it, it's pretty well defined where we see, who owns what. So who owns what task, what actions, they call it an action, who are the people that needs to be involved, and how do we do that, right? That's the definition of their process. Now, it's also very complex as it relies, as you can see, on a sequence of actions that must be performed by different owners, different teams, but all in a very specific order. And you can see that there's a different owner for each of those tasks, right? So in real life, when you execute the process, it takes forever to find the owner, to execute the action, and to inform whoever the stakeholders for particular incidents are. They don't use tools to help automate some of the tasks. They don't use any tool to ensure that each step here that you see have been executed and completed so that we can move to the next one. It also takes, for this very reason, it takes forever to hand it off to the next team once an action is completed. They don't use tools to collect the information, which means they spend a lot of time after the fact just to collect the information so that they can have a proper post-mortem debrief and they have the proper information for compliance. And what's also very important to see, if you look at under the incident column, when you see detection and alert, by the process, in case of a major incident, the goal here is to be able to start the conference bridge after 50 minutes. Right? You see, 50 minutes, that's when we are going to declare a major incident and we are going to open a conference bridge and a chat channel, which is a long time, a very, very long time, right? 50 minutes into the incident and we still haven't declared the incident and still haven't gathered the response team so they can start the investigation. So, going back to your point, George, about wasteful activities, what you want to do here, and I'm going to assume that every organization, so for all of you who are listening to us today, you have an incident response process in place. Whether it looks like this one here that you see, whether it's simplified or more complex, I'm going to assume that you have an incident response plan in place. What you want to do, and going back to George's point, is try to identify the wasteful activities, right? So that's what I like about Lean IT, by the way, or Lean, is it's basically common sense, right? Don't do things that don't add any value, right? So you want to look at the process, at your process. So the way I like to describe the incident response process is by breaking it down into 5 phases. The first one is IT needs to be aware that there's an issue, detect, right? And in most organizations, you're going to use automated tools like a application performance management tool, the Dynatrace, the App Dynamics, the New Relic, the SOSTA, and so on and so forth. Because what you don't want is to have your business users call into your service desk to report a major incident, right? And then you might be using a ticketing system, right? So you have a central ticketing system, ITSM platform to collect all the information you're getting from those monitoring tools, or maybe you've decided that for incidents they're going to be created manually by a service desk analyst, right? Whatever you choose to do, that's your detect phase, right? Now we are at the point where we've declared a P1, and you can see here on the slide, I put let's say you have a 4-hour service level agreement. That means you have a maximum time of 4 hours to resolve the incident and restore the service. So what's going to happen next? At one point, we're going to find the right team of resolvers who are going to start investigating the issue. What is the root cause? What is the application at fault? Where is it coming from? Is it an issue with database, with the network, with the code, and so on and so forth, with a third-party provider, and so on. Once we've identified the root cause, we're going to put a remediation plan together, or we're going to execute a run book if we have one available. And last but not least, we're going to give it a try and see if whatever change we've made into production, whatever configuration change or code change we've made has actually resolved the incident and actually restored the service, right? And as you can see in my 5-phase process, we're missing one step here, one tile to complete the drift. And this tile is respond and rally, which actually consists in providing the information that we have in the monitoring tools or in the ticketing system and providing this information directly to the right resolvers so that they can start the investigation, right? And what's very interesting is that for most organizations, it takes an average of an hour just to do this phase, just to perform this phase, right? It takes and we'll get into the details of what this means, right? We're going to dig deeper into this. But EMA, and there are many research out there showing that when you do this phase manually, technically, it takes a long time to identify the right people and reach out to them, make sure they've received the message, and engage with the rest of the team to start the investigation, right? And what we'll see is that if you take a lean lens on the process, you'll see that right there, we can already improve the situation. So back to the drift. So this is how we execute the response to an incident, okay? And ideally, what you want to do is make sure that you've completed all the 5 steps or the five phases before the clock start ringing, right? After 4 hours or at the end of whatever your SLA might be for a particular application in a particular situation, right? So in this case, you see that, yes, we just missed our SLA. And that can mean financial penalties. It can mean customer frustration. This can mean brand reputation at risk. And, you know, that there's going to be a business impact on the team and on the business at this point. So how can we get rid of all the wasteful activities that are already in the process so that we can, like you said, George, execute faster, restore faster? So automation, and that's what we'll see, automation can help here. So low-hanging fruit, just look at your rally and response phase today. Investigate, dig into how this is done in your organization. There is no reason why this phase shouldn't be done in a few minutes, right? Within a few minutes, less than 5 minutes, we should be able to rally and respond. Therefore, on average, we should be able to give 55 minutes back to the teams to complete the rest of the process. So how do organizations do that? How do they use automation to reduce this phase here? So let's get into the details. So this is, I'm sharing here with you a research that was done by IDG Research this year, at the beginning of this year. And basically the teams were asked for this very phase, the respond and rally. First, what are the different activities that have to be done? And two, they asked those organizations, today, do you perform those actions automatically or still manually? So you have the breakdown between the number or the proportion of companies which are still doing those activities manually versus the ones that have already already adopted automation. So what are those activities? And what you want to do here is think about how you do it in your organization today. How is it being done in your organization today? Is it manual or is it already automated? The first one is, okay, so let's say we have a P1 for this particular application. Who are going to be the right IT staff? Again, based on the application, based on the severity or the priority of the incident, based on skills that are going to be required, right? How many people do we need from the network teams? How many DBAs do we need? How many application developers, front-end developers do we need? How many from what locations? Where are those people, right? Where are those skills that we're looking for? And based on who's on call, okay? We need to know ASAP who's responsible for responding to, for providing support to a specific application, right? We don't want to try to reach out people who are on vacation or people who are not supposed to be responding because they will ignore the notifications, right? The second, and this can be automated. The second activity that is being done, whether or not you use automation, is communicate with those very IT experts or IT engineers or IT staff that we want to rally, we want to engage, and make sure that they get the notification. So again, an email is not a notification. We don't notify people via emails. Now, next one is so yeah. Let me give you maybe more information here. If I just said we don't want to use emails, why? Because emails don't wake up anyone at 2 in the morning. So we want to use other channels to reach out to our people, right? We want to use SMS, mobile app push notifications, voice, right? Let's call them on their cell phone, on their if it's during business hours, on their office phone. And let's keep calling them until they respond, right? So another very important thing, and we discussed this yesterday, George, it's the confirmation that they've received the message. So automate the fact that, yes, they have confirmed, they have received the notification, and they're going to join the conference bridge. So confirmation. Like I said, calling people on different numbers until they respond. And if they don't respond, escalation. And escalation today can be automated. If people don't respond to different calls on different numbers for a few cycles, after a few times, then automatically escalate to the next person in line. And the next person in line can be the backup or can be the manager, right? And if no one answers, then call the entire team, right? We don't want we want to make sure that no alerts, no notification are ever missed, right? After that, it takes so much time just to set up a conference bridge. Why don't we use automation to allow people to join a conference bridge in one click from wherever they might be? If you're dealing with let's say you have a new mobile application for your company, online banking, for instance, and some of your developers are outside of the US. They might be in Europe. They might be in China. They might be in India. How do you get people to get on a conference bridge in a very easy and instant way? One click collaboration. This is technology that's available today, right? At the same time, while you are reaching out to the IT resolvers, identify the stakeholders. We may need to inform our key senior managers on the IT side of the business, but also on the business side of the business, right? If we are under attack, dealing with a cyber attack, we may need at one point to reach out to legal. So who's my legal? Who in the legal department should I engage, right? What communication should I send this person? What information am I allowed to share, right? I'm not gonna send an email to the entire company saying, "Hey, we've been attacked," right? So all these can be predefined and automated. Identify the impacted users. That's big here. If we know we have an issue, that means Our customers know we have an issue. Why don't we tell them in a proactive way that, guys, we know there's an issue, IT is working on it, we'll let you know when it's fixed, right? As opposed to not communicating early enough and get hundreds, if not thousands of people flooding your service desk with looking for information. And another area of activities that are not automated today for many organizations is the collection of information, right? For post-mortem, but also for compliance, and that can also be automated. So hopefully this is giving you some benchmark about what companies are doing in terms of getting into more automation into their incident response process. And if you'd like more information, I'm happy to share with you the actual data, the actual research from IDG. So the idea here is, again, end-to-end incident response and trying to identify the different manual activities that do not provide any value to the process. That's the lean theory here. And the goal for organizations is to get to a point where we're going to be able to, whatever the nature of the incident, right, can be service operations related, can be a ransomware, can be a DDoS attack, or any information security incident, can be a DevOps issue, right? We release a new version of the application. Guess what? It broke something else. We need to do a rollback. It can be infrastructure related, a network outage, or just a slowdown for some reason of the network, right? Whatever the incident, we want to centralize the incident response, right? So let's assume that we're using a lot of all those monitoring tools. They should be fitting into your ticketing system. I've put here a few names like ServiceNow, Sharewell, BMC, Remedy, but whatever you use, you might be using Jira. The idea here is to centralize the information collection on the incident. But then, how do we respond and rally and respond faster and keep stakeholders and impacted customers informed and notified? That's using incident response, right? So this is here one of, that should be your roadmap to where you want to be, so that for every single type of incident, automatically you'll be able to identify, reach out to the IT responders and get them to collaborate on whatever tools. Again, we're not here to replace, to change everything the way they work, but leverage the different tools they're using, leverage the different teams that will be involved. And to the ultimate goal, which is going to be to minimize the downtime and accelerate the resolution by getting rid of all the wasteful activities that can be automated. And I guess that's what I want. That's the message I wanted to deliver, George, in complement to your side of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Vincent. And let me just kind of wrap it up here with when I read this, I think, wow, I'm the old guy talking about the way it used to be, but I do believe that we've lost some sight of this. So back in the 90s, in that version of ITIL, believe it or not, we were talking about an expanded incident lifecycle. We were talking about what Vincent had laid up there in terms of drift, in terms of taking the incident and dividing it into a detect phase, a rally and respond phase, an investigate phase, fix and test. Well, that makes an awful lot of sense when you're dealing with major incident management. We need to use that expanded incident life cycle. So I am specifically recommending that we start doing this if we're not doing it now. And that we start, because there's no way we can shorten up the entire incident response without looking at the individual pieces and then figuring out which parts of those we already have automated and what parts remain manual, either because we didn't know we could automate them or because we chose not to, or we didn't see that it was that necessary because the time was meeting an SLA, or I was really able to negotiate bigger or longer SLAs. So, hey, we don't need to rush this. But that's not the way business is operating now. Business is operating differently today than it was before. So you're going to discover, I believe, that the bulk of time spent on specific elements in there, response, resolution, service restoration, is going to involve some manual processes and practices which could be automated. It's only by looking at this expanded incident lifecycle that you're going to understand where you can add value to incident response. Thanks, Vincent.
Yeah, thank you, George. And I'm just going to do the same. As a wrap up, I'm going to say yes. Like I said, like I shared with you, many organizations already have done it or have automated their incident response process or are in the process of doing it. So my recommendation for you would be learn from your peers. And one way to have access to actual real user experience in terms of implementing incident response automation is to read those customer reviews on IT Central Station. So I find that IT Central Station is a very, very useful and good and reliable source of information when it comes to sharing experience with adoption of a new technology or implementation of an enterprise software. So, like I said here, IT Central Station, you can search for IT alerting, which is the space that incident response belongs to, or even Everbridge if you want to hear how we work with our partners and customers on automating their incident response processes. If you want to learn more about the product side now or the solution, then you can always request a free demo at everbridge.com/demo. And with that, I think we have a few minutes for questions, Shirley.
Yes. So we do have a few questions that have come in from the audience. So the first question, I believe this is directed at you, George. Are there existing organizations that have incredibly fast incident resolution?
So I'm sure there are many, but I only have direct knowledge of two specific organizations. And the caveat here is they have all the money on earth. And one is Google, and Google's using site reliability engineering, which it created and pioneered. And they have a mean time to repair that's measured in milliseconds in many cases. And it's incredibly automated. It takes this concept and this discussion of automation and moves it to the extreme. And the other is Netflix, and also someone with a lot of money, an organization with a lot of money, who basically has pioneered the concept of anti-fragility and literally of intentionally breaking their own environment in order to do better incident response. And they automate the incident response as well. Those two organizations I know about. I'm sure there are others, but I don't have direct knowledge.
George, I have to make a comment here. The two examples you made were Netflix and Google, right, which are two born on the web companies, right? I mean, everything they do is digital, and they were born digital. And I like to see the world into two categories. They are the born on the web companies, the Facebook, the PayPal, the Netflix, and the Google, and they are the rest of the companies, right? Banks, think about banks, older companies. And when it comes to incident response, I think the challenges are way different when you've started on the web and when you have, like you talked about in your presentation, a lot of technical debt with a lot of legacy systems that you can't even retire and so on and so forth. Just wanting to mention this. It's easier for a Google or a Netflix to be agile than it is for a big bank or a older company.
I completely agree with you, and I would say that neither of those companies really has any technical debt, at least not the way you and I would talk about it. That's for sure.
Okay, here's a question for you, Vincent. The question is, how difficult is it to implement an end-to-end solution like the one you described on your slide, Vincent?
So I guess this question refers to the slide I shared with the end-to-end incident response process. So how difficult is it to implement? I mean, there were different pieces on the slide, right? There was the monitoring. Maybe I can go back. There was the monitoring aspect where you detect your possible or potential issues. Then there's the feed into the ticketing system or ITSM system. So this can be automated or not. So automation here. Usually all those monitoring tools would feed into an event correlation tools, a Microsoft, a Bitpanda, or can also automatically create a ticket in those ticketing systems. Now, and that's where I'm going to give more information because I think this is about the incident response. So how difficult is it to implement the incident response automation aspects? So that's what's happening after the ticket has been created in the ticketing system. Again, for most organizations have a process in place. They do incident response because when something happens, something goes wrong with IT, we need to recover. We need to fix it. So there's some kind of process, right? It's more or less documented, but there is a process. So what we're going to do here is automate the process, automate the actions that are included in this process. So I'm going to say the recommendation we make when we work with companies is always look at the most critical mission, the most mission critical applications, and start with that. If you have a MIM team, major incident management team, start with that. And usually, I'm going to say it takes between 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, you have a end-to-end incident response process implemented in and even integrated with your ticketing system if you decide to do so. Again, this is just a matter of understanding who does what, who's responsible for what, taking what's in place, what tools are those teams using, and reviewing the communication plan, the escalation plan, and it's mostly configuration.
Okay, so I think we only have time for one last question. So what would be a best practice to partner change management and incident management desks?
Wow. I guess when you think about the processes, both incident management and change management were attempting to get an out of control situation in IT about 30 years ago in control. And we've definitely reached, I think, that point. We're more in control than we used to be, way more in control in terms of changes, I believe, some organizations less than others, and in terms of incident management, at least we know about incidents, et cetera. The question now is how we're going to respond. I think that one of the things that I've been most impressed with in what Vincent and I have talked about offline, as well as during this hour-long presentation, was the fact that Vincent showed me some videos of some real customers, which they talked about how fast they were actually able to get this to be productive. and that to me was incredibly impressive. These were, as Vincent's talking about, what you and I would call normal companies. I mean, they're large companies, but they're normal companies, not web startups, not all of the stuff, all virtual, etc. And they were able to implement some of these alerting processes, both from change and from incident, in an incredibly fast way. I was very impressed with what Vincent showed me.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you, George and Vincent, for a great presentation today. Again, this session was recorded and you will receive an email with a link to the recording. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. So this concludes our presentation today. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, George. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shirley. Thanks, Vincent.